committee. So throw out my rankings, throw out the AP, throw out the coaches poll, strike that. Throw out the coaches poll, throw out the AP, keep mine handy, and we'll check out the college football playoff rankings tonight, knowing that the committee will be able to explain this in any way they see fit. And then going forward, even if there's not a whole lot of logic involved in the way teams move up and down, they will be able to explain and justify that as well. But we will hold them accountable here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate everybody being here for the big watch party. We will watch the playoff rankings being unveiled, and then we will take your comments and questions and calls. I believe that based on what is happening in the college football season and based on the obvious, that Cincinnati's in a different category than everybody else. Everybody else is over here. Cincinnati is clearly in their own category because they're in a group of 5 conference, and their schedule to date is the worst out of all these teams that are in contention, and it's going to continue to get worse. It's going to be by far the worst resume, no question, out of these 6 or 7 contending teams. So what is the playoff committee going to do now? They've got to play Penn State and Purdue and Ohio State in a Big Ten championship game, and they're either going to validate their ranking and continue to move up and substantiate it and place that in concrete, or Michigan State's going to lose and drop out. That's all there is to it. Alabama, the same thing. Georgia, the same thing. Oklahoma, the same thing. Oregon, to a certain extent, the same thing. Wake Forest, well, we'll have to wait and see. They've got their 4 most difficult games coming up. Make that 5 most difficult games with the conference championship game. So we've got the resume, we've got the schedule, we've got strength of schedule, strength of record, eye test. Let's see what all of you have to say here at the Voice of College Football. When it comes to Cincinnati, I don't know where they're going to be ranked. I've got them at number 7, I believe. I just don't think that their opponents warrant them being ranked higher, and especially when they've not dominated and have scraped by the likes of Navy and to a certain extent Tulane. All right. Let's check out your comments before we lock in here. John likes Cincy at 5. Hummus Hero, Cincy at 7. John says even better. Keep them down. Jet Mech, Georgia, 1. Ohio State, 2. Alabama, 3. Oklahoma, 4. Thank you. That's our show. Good night, everyone. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, 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 no. Everybody stay here. Everybody stay here. John. Okay, here we go. Let's get to it. We got our top 25. Pitt 25, San Diego State 24, Fresno State 23, Iowa 22, Wisconsin 21. Should I mark this down? They should have this online immediately, right? Right. Wisconsin ahead of Iowa. Got it. They just beat them by 20 points. Fresno State. San Diego State just lost this past weekend to Fresno State. That's interesting. They've got 4 teams stacked on top of each other, in which the team with the worst record beat the team with the better record, and they've got the team with the worst record one spot ahead of them. And then Pitt at number 25. Okay? Iowa obviously needs help to win the Big Ten Western Division after losing to Wisconsin. Wisconsin holds its own destiny, as does Minnesota, and they play the last game of the season. Let's see what else you guys have here, or what do you think about 21 through 25? Where will Florida be ranked? We need to move this up to about 75 spots for Florida. Oh, you don't deserve to be that high. They barely beat a lot of teams. Cheryl's proud of the Buckeyes. They're young, playing better every week. All right, here we go. 16 through 20. Minnesota at 20. NC State at 19, Kentucky 18, Mississippi State gets a lot of love at 17, Ole Miss at 16. Mississippi State with 3 losses. They did lose to Memphis. Controversial ending, but still lost to Alabama by 40. And Mississippi State also lost to LSU. So they got a win against Kentucky. So they've got them, again, a team with a worse record that beat another team, Mississippi State over Kentucky this past weekend, is one spot. This has now happened 3 times, one spot ahead of Kentucky. Ole Miss at 16. So the committee is obviously valuing schedules. And they always have, and they should. As Herb Street just mentioned, Minnesota runs the ball 73% of the time, and they've lost 3 running backs. Lost their 2 best running backs and just continue to run the ball down everyone's throats. 11 through 15. BYU all the way up to 15. Texas A&M 14, Auburn 13, Baylor 12, Oklahoma State 11. Oklahoma State beat Baylor, and they've got the same record. Auburn and Texas A&M play soon. Don't Auburn and Texas A&M play this week? I believe so. Auburn, Texas A&M, that should be a heck of a game. BYU might be a little high. BYU losing to Boise State and Baylor. Okay. Yeah, Oklahoma's got a backloaded schedule, that's for sure. They still have Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State as well, and the Big 12 championship game. So these teams in the Big 10 and the SEC West, in particular in the Big 12, still have about 4 tough games to get through. Can you imagine an Oklahoma State or Baylor getting back into this because they still have about 3 tough games plus a Big 12 championship game to get through? And if they finish 12-1, all right, let's get to the top 10, folks. Let's see it. Here we go. One at a time through the top 10. At number 10, Notre Dame. I believe I've got Notre Dame at 9. The Irish, of course, they got the one big loss, and that loss is going to keep them out of the playoff because Cincinnati would have to lose twice for Notre Dame to jump Cincinnati in a certain sense if you hold true to head-to-head. So Notre Dame to get to the playoff needs a whole lot of help, more so than other one-loss teams because they don't play a conference championship game. And Notre Dame, that's the way it is. That's the way it should be. Number 9, Wake Forest. There they are. 8-0. But who have they beaten? Virginia. Virginia's the best win. All right. Let's see number 8. That's pretty much my favorite. Pretty much my rooting interest right there would be Wake at 9. Man, I'm rooting for Wake. Who else is rooting for Wake to go undefeated and just blow this thing up? Blow it up, Wake. Blow it up. So right now, as Reese Davis just said, Cincinnati's strength of schedule is 100th and Wake's 98th, but Wake's is going to jump since he's going to stay down. Oh boy, look at that. This is the first committee move that's going to raise some eyebrows. Oklahoma at 8. So obviously that has everything to do with them beating West Virginia, the last play of the game on a last second field goal, barely beating Nebraska by 1 score, escaping Tulane 40-35, having to come all the way back from 21 down to beat Texas. And the ugly effort against Kansas. So the committee, hey, I don't necessarily disagree with this, even though I've got Oklahoma ranked 3. I have stated over and over, my rankings are razor tight between 2 and 8. So Oklahoma, they're still fine. We understand that they're still fine. Even though they're number 8, they're fine. They've got Oklahoma State, Baylor, Iowa State, and a Big 12 championship game. Just win. Now they're at the part of the season. So if they would have won these games big, of course, they'd be much higher. They could be number 2 right now based on where they started the season. But they haven't. So they're fine. Now it's just about winning. If they win as ugly the rest of the way, they're going to be fine because teams are going to be losing. All right, let's go to 7. Michigan. So Michigan stays ahead of an undefeated Oklahoma team. Yeah, that's fine. If they lost to one of the better teams in the country, which we think they did, Michigan State. We're still waiting for Michigan State to prove more. We're still in this proving state for a lot of teams that have beaten a lot of bad teams, have beaten marginal teams, and Michigan would have a better win in Wisconsin than Oklahoma has Texas, if you look at the best win. And Michigan's been more dominant against the likes of who? Northwestern, and who else in the Big Ten? Somebody else they whipped up on. So we are waiting on number 6. What do you guys like and not like at this point? Nebraska. Well, we're waiting on Nebraska, of course. Nebraska, with all those 1-score losses, I think the committee is definitely going to value the eye test with Nebraska. D-Rock says Michigan's too high. Of course, a Notre Dame fan would. Yes, D-Rock, I got you. I've got Michigan at 8, I believe. Oh, here we've got our board of 6 because we want to see the last 2 out. So Georgia's 1. Does anybody disagree with Georgia being number 1? Anybody in America? And of course, I hate to pull ratings away from ESPN. I hate to do that, but I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much for that. That we are pulling massive ratings away from ESPN. They're going to have to do some research tomorrow morning to figure out what happened to our audience. Oh, they all went to the Voice of College Football. Georgia at 1. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. what's going to have to happen for Georgia to drop from 1 to 5? That's what's got to happen. Is the committee's got to say they're the best team with the best resume and they fall to 5. Alabama at 2. Alabama at 2. That's too high. Okay, this tells me eye test / what that really means. Eye test means name brand number 2. Alabama should not be number 2. They blasted Ole Miss. Okay. Ole Miss has done what? The committee is setting itself up for Alabama to beat Georgia in the championship game. And yeah, what Galloway's talking about, I believe right now, not that I listen to him too often, is that Alabama could possibly win out the rest of the regular season, lose the SEC championship game in a close game, and still, let's say, drop from 2 to 4. Alabama could lose 2 games and still finish at number 4. All right, number 3, we've got Michigan State. Okay, makes sense. If you compare Michigan State and Alabama, Michigan State has not lost. I think that means something, right? You have not lost a game. And Michigan State's got a better win than anything Alabama's got with Michigan, right? Even by the committee's rankings. Alabama's beaten Florida, Ole Miss, Miami. Ole Miss, Florida, Tennessee, Miami. Okay. So now we're looking at Cincinnati, Oregon, and Ohio State, and that's probably the order we're going to see them. At number 4, Oregon. Cincinnati's in trouble. They are in trouble. How are they going to make up ground if these teams don't lose, or if Alabama and Georgia just, regardless of what happens there, basically the committee has set up Alabama and Georgia to play in the playoff? Yeah, it looks like Cincinnati's out of this thing. They need a lot of help, because even if they're 5 and Ohio State's 6, whatever it is, 5, 6, 6, 5, Ohio State has the opportunities coming up. Although Cincinnati can rest on Ohio State's going to knock out Michigan State, or Michigan State's going to knock out Ohio State. We will be taking your calls after we get 5 and 6. I've got to hook up the phone lines, and then we will take your calls and get your perspective on all of this here at the Voice of College Football, of course. Appreciate everybody being here. And why 5 and 6 is so suspenseful, I don't know, but they got to drag this on for an hour, right? I think we would like to hear from the committee chair as well. Number 5. And we can all compare how much of a delay our TV has compared to other people. The Buckeyes at 5 and Cincinnati at 6. There you go. There you go. The big surprise for me is Oklahoma at 8. That's the big surprise. I'm not necessarily arguing with it or find it to be that egregious. We got Birmingham Kane thinks Cincinnati got screwed over. D-Rock, yep, that's what it looks like. Do we really know, as Herb Street just said, that an SEC championship game loss is eliminating Alabama? They're at number 2. You lose to the consensus number 1 team by a field goal on the last second of the game. Gary says Oregon is too high. The Rod Farva says Oregon should be higher. Not you, Dexter. These rankings mean nothing, absolutely nothing. They don't go week by week like you do. Peter is saying, what's the stat where no team ranked 2 or 3 has made it to the college football Final Four? So we're talking about in the first. That would be interesting to look at. To look at the first initial standings each college football playoff rankings season. May do a video on that. Man, I'm going to mark that down for a video. So Galloway just said Cincinnati's being disrespected, but he said not being in the top 5 is understandable. Kendrick is the GOAT and also likes Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and Oregon in the playoff. Kenneth, Mark, you picked Alabama and Georgia for the Natty. You are right, Kenneth. Yes, I did. Thank you for the reminder. Don't know if that's going to come to pass, but that's what I had with Ohio State and Notre Dame losing in the playoffs. So I would like to hear what the committee chair has to say, and then we'll hook up the phone lines and we'll get at it. What do we got here, Gary? Mark, that's an old talking point. The person quoted an old data point. The initial college football poll, number 2, number 3, has yet to make the subsequent college football Final Four. So, okay. Well, that's what I'm talking about. It obviously has to be an old data point because we don't know who's making the Final Four this year. But I wanted to go through and see, well, Cincinnati is moving up to a Power 5 conference. All right, folks, let's go Deeks. Yeah, let's do it, boys. And girls, of course, are 3% of our audience, Cheryl and others. Bring in those ladies to talk college football with us. That would be great. And we're going to be cranked up here for the next, who knows how long. We'll keep these phone lines humming. So 227 on the line. Go out there and grab anybody who loves college football. We're going to talk playoff rankings. I'm going to hook up the phone lines right now. And in addition to that, we are only going to pause because I want to hear what the committee chair has to say. But otherwise, we are on the clock taking your calls as soon as I hook up the phone line. So talk amongst yourselves. And I am curious to do a historical video looking at the first 7 years of college football playoffs to see what happened to the first four. I know what happened the first year. The first year we had what? Mississippi State was number one. Ole Miss and Auburn were in the top four. Wasn't the first college football playoff release week 1, 2014, all SEC teams, right? It was Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, and Auburn, I think.
Thank you for calling Collins Studios Hub. Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Better than all this is we've got some action tonight, folks. We've got action. What do we've got? The Bobcats of Ohio, and we've got Miami of Ohio playing. Two MAC teams from Ohio going at it. It gets no better than that. Okay.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Collins Studio web interface.
Oh, here we go. The chairman's on. I want to hear this.
I would say the committee has great respect for Cincinnati. The win at Notre Dame, clearly at Notre Dame is a really impressive win. When you look at their schedule after that, or who they played after that, who else did they beat? So that was the other question. And
nobody.
You know, the committee has been watching games all year, and most recently in the last 2 weeks, a 2-6 Navy team, and then a 1-7 Tulane team with a freshman quarterback starting. So very impressive win against Notre Dame, a lot of respect. But looking at the whole picture, we feel 6 is the right place for Cincinnati.
And as I scan the rankings, I don't see any more teams in the American ranked at this point, which would tend to imply that they're close to their ceiling. Is that how you would characterize it? You know, absent chaos in front of them where everybody starts losing.
You know, we don't talk about a ceiling at all. Again, we look at what's happened so far. We don't project ahead. I think most everybody knows that. We look at what's happened so far, and Cincinnati earned their way to the number 6 spot with that big win, being undefeated, and with that big win at Notre Dame. But we haven't talked at all about a ceiling. So I really am not. I'm not ready to say there's a ceiling.
Okay, what about head-to-head? I mean, that's always it's in the criteria that among teams that are viewed as similar, that it is one of the criteria used to try to separate those teams. It seemed to be a defining characteristic not only between Ohio State and Oregon, but throughout these rankings. How did those discussions go with head-to-head being considered?
Well, you know, the committee, everyone has their own opinions, but as you go through with the 13 members, head-to-head is certainly talked about. When you talk about Oregon and Ohio State, Oregon has had some nice wins. They've played very good football. They've been through a lot of challenges, losing their starting running back and some other, you know, Thibodeau being their best player early on. But they beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and that was really important to the committee. Ohio State is playing great football. Since that time, they're on a roll. They're explosive offensively. So at the end of the day, that's why they're one slot behind Oregon because of the head-to-head. But right up there near the top because of how terrific they've been playing.
Okay, you mentioned as we were getting ready to talk during that quick break that it's a real log jam. And if I heard you correctly, I think you mentioned 3 through 10 sort of offhandedly. Is Alabama clearly above the rest of that group in the judgment of the committee right now?
Well, the committee spent, right away, Georgia was a clear number one, and a fair amount of conversation about where Alabama has come from and where they've been and who they've played and beaten, Mississippi and Mississippi State, and how well they're playing. But there was a lot of consensus for Alabama to be number two. And then after that,
all right, let's hit the phone lines, because the more I listen to this, the more I realize and am reminded that we're not going to learn anything from anything he has to say.
Methodology that the committee uses to evaluate these teams. Sometimes you're not comparing teams as directly as you might anticipate. How difficult was it to separate that top three and then the next three, because you guys do it in six, take three out, and so on down the line? How difficult was it to take those top three out? Or to rank them in the things we do, just one of the things we do is we do put them in bunches.
All right.
But then we vote on them in larger chunks. So what I mean by that is
Here we go. Let's hit the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everyone here. Let's go. You're kicking us off here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Jeremiah, what's going on? Oh.
Probably when they play off, you're right about not making very much of the group five. Because there's going to be the Mountain West. Apparently, perhaps more competitive. Two lost Fresno State and a one loss at
Gary,
not
telling
like
us how
I
soft
think
it's
you get ahead
made and sharing it
with
with
Ohio
appreciate
State.
the insight. We're not from the Midwest.
Unfortunately, hey, I'm not listening to anything you're saying. Unfortunately, we've got an issue here. Why is that not? Hang on just a second. Why is this not connected? We are waiting for the Bluetooth to connect. So please hold your thoughts. Sorry about that. Don't know why it's taking so long to cycle and connect, because it's typically connected all the time. Okay. Don't know what our issue is. Won't stop cycling.
Hey, my name is Chandler, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A peppermint chip milkshake is the little pieces of the peppermint that you get. It tastes like it's just the top of the line peppermint. For me, no milkshake is topping the peppermint chip milkshake.
I don't want to do that. Well, I may have to call my tech guy. Get this figured out. Yeah, everything is connected. Don't know why it's not working for us. Sorry about that. We'll have to have you call back. We're going to stay on live because I don't want to shut this down and then have to do all this over again. So we'll see if we can get some help here. If not, we will do this the old-fashioned way. Hmm.
Hello.
Hello, sir. I'll warn you before you keep talking that you're on live.
Okay.
So you can imagine what the problem is. We're not connected,
Right.
our phone line, and I'm going through the same procedures we talked about last time. And the Bluetooth is on in my settings,
Right.
and the Rodecaster Pro is selected, but it says it's not connected. So when I click to connect it, it just, well, it doesn't do any. Before it was cycling. So next to my Rodecaster Pro under my devices, it says it's not connected. And so when
Okay. You may have to repair it. So if you go into your settings on your, let me just make sure I'm giving you the right advice.
yeah,
If you go into your settings on, hold on one second here.
Oh.
You go into the Bluetooth settings on the phone.
yes,
And you go into my devices. Is your Rodecaster listed in that list?
Bluetooth, yes,
Okay. So that little eye, that little blue eye,
yep,
click on that and unpair it. Forget this device. In other words,
Okay.
very,
okay,
and then try to repair it,
that's
and
right,
maybe that'll do the trick.
okay.
Hopefully that'll do the trick.
The last time I had this issue, I clicked, yeah, the not connected, and it connected it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's just cycling right now.
And sometimes it just needs something happens with the software. It just needs to repair, and that's all it takes.
Okay. Well, next to the devices listing, it's just cycling right now.
You have to put your Rodecaster in pairing mode, so you got to click, hold that button down, the Bluetooth button on the board.
Oh,
And it's got to be, it should be blinking. Good discovery mode.
it's not blinking.
Hold on, let me just check mine. I'm gonna make sure I'm telling you the right thing.
Huh? Oh, now it is.
I'm just guessing here. Wait, I'm just looking at it.
Okay, it might have. It's blinking now.
Okay.
So you think I should be holding it down?
Well, what's blinking?
The
button on your Rodecaster?
Yes.
Okay. And see if it pops up in your devices there.
Yeah, it did. Rodecaster
Okay.
Pro popped up.
Perfect. So click on you got to pair it back up. And hopefully you get a connection.
Bluetooth on. Okay. So, okay. It says it's connected. Right. Oh, and you are suddenly coming through my earpiece. So.
And then just put that fader up and it should go up over there.
Okay. All right. Very good,
That's a good sign you hear me. Yeah. So I think you should be good.
All right. I forgot a step in there, I believe, to reconnect that. All right, Marty. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. You got it. All right. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye. Okay. Have we lost everybody? I wouldn't blame you at all if we have by now. Appreciate everybody being here. Technical issues. What can I say? All right, let's get back at it here. The Voice of College Football. I think we're talking college football rankings, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello? Somehow disconnect. it's possible.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and
Guess I got to reconnect the call in.
enter your
line, too.
6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now
Okay.
in the host room and can
Let's try
manage your
this again.
callers from
Let's
the
go
Call-In
with,
Studio
another
web
call.
interface.
Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Jeremiah.
Victory. Thank you, Jeremiah. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, I was looking at the rankings and where Cincinnati was placed, and I'm looking at teams that are behind them, and I don't really see a way for them to work their way in the playoffs, especially since they're buffing up the Mountain West Conference with Fresno State, and they didn't rank Houston with 1 loss or SMU that was undefeated with 1 loss. Now, and those losses are basically going to be nothing, like you said earlier. They need them to be undefeated in order to have a reputable.
You're being on. Hey, you keep yelling. You might be on ESPN radio, bud.
Okay. Now I got to make a choice to kill one of these two, and I don't know which one to kill. Here we go. So I apologize to whomever, but through the whole technical issue, there were two phone calls coming through. So who am I still on the line with? Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, Mark.
Yeah, it's Mark.
It's the real MVP. How you doing?
The real MVP, and my apologies to the other caller. But I had to pick one, and I have no idea what the numbers obviously are and who's who. So anyway, again, please call back.
I guess I was the lucky winner.
You were the lucky winner. What's going on?
Well, I want to talk about these rankings because there's some interesting trends I've noticed within the ranking.
Okay.
Wisconsin is ahead of Iowa, and
Yep.
Mississippi State's ahead of Kentucky,
Yep.
even though each of those teams have one more loss than the other.
Yep.
So is it possible if Oregon loses that they're still ranked ahead of Ohio State?
No. No.
I would have thought no,
No.
but just noticing how those
No.
two things went down.
No.
Okay.
It's coincidence. It's coincidence. There's a 1 spot difference.
Okay.
If Wisconsin had the same record as Iowa, they would be 7-8 spots higher. And if Mississippi State or if Kentucky back that up, Mississippi State, it would be the same deal. No, it's just a coincidence. No, Oregon cannot go out and lose to Oregon State and stay 1 spot ahead of Ohio State. No.
Okay. I was just making sure because I just saw that trend in the committee, or those patterns. I thought it was worthy of asking. I thought it was unlikely as well, but I noticed it. It was an odd quirk I noticed.
Yeah, it was an odd quirk.
Well,
I noticed it as well. It happened with those two. It also happened with, not in the same way, but Oklahoma State was 1 spot ahead of Baylor and they beat them head to head. But they have the same record.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what really, I think Cincinnati, I know some people think they're too low. I think they're just right at 6. In that 6 range. I mean, what hurts them more, though, than 6 is SMU and Houston both not being ranked. And instead, other group of 5 teams like San Diego State and Fresno State being ranked. Because at least if there was a Power 5 in the top 25, you can see them losing. But with the competition that San Diego State and Fresno State have to play, it's unlikely they lose.
Yeah, Cincinnati's in a tough spot. There's no way around it. They need chaos in the Big Ten. They need chaos. Even the teams behind them are going to leapfrog them. That's all there is to it. Oklahoma, it was a statement made by the committee that they don't value Oklahoma's wins because of the sloppiness of them. but they're fine.
Yeah.
They're fine. They just have to win the games in front of them.
All I'm saying, Mark, is I said that exact same thing 24 hours ago. I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back because I had them at 8. Which I know I was probably one of 3 people on earth who had them at 8, but.
Well, I'm going to give
Feels
myself a pat on the back. Literally, I am right now. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back because regardless of what my rankings are compared to the committees, I'm always going to say mine are correct. So they don't have to line up with the committee. No, I'm just kidding. I have never stated that mine are flawless in any such way. I have Oklahoma at 3. As you well know. But yeah, you line up with the committee. Yep.
I think if they beat Baylor, they're going to jump Cincinnati.
Yeah, you would think so.
I think that's all it's going to take.
Yep. I think so too.
Now, Wake Forest, they also need a lot of help.
Right.
I think Wake Forest is going to need help. A little bit of help, not much. But I think there is some scenarios where Wake Forest being 13-0 does make the playoffs.
Wake Forest does not need as much help as Cincinnati, but they would need some help.
It's Alabama. If Alabama beats Georgia, and then you have a Big Ten winner, and Oklahoma goes undefeated, that's the 4. It's looking like, and Wake Forest would be left out at 13-0, which
if Alabama
totally
wins the rest of its games, they're going to do nothing but obviously stay at 2, but have a much stronger grip on number 2. And then if they go and lose the championship game to Georgia, razor close, aren't they going to still make the playoff?
I would have them in, but I disagree. Now I typed it in the chat with what Kirk and all them people were saying. It's like, nope, they can't be in. They can't be in. They got 2 losses. It's like, where's that in the rule book? You have 2 losses, you're out.
It's not in the rule book.
Georgia by 3. Right.
I wouldn't have them in. I'd kick them out. But the way they're setting it up right now is for Alabama to stay in the playoff if they lose the SEC championship game close.
Right. Honestly, I could see them losing even if it's by 10 at this point.
Well, if Alabama if Alabama loses the SEC championship game by 10 points and they make the playoff, and let's say Wake Forest is undefeated and Oklahoma's undefeated and Ohio State or Michigan State win the Big Ten title, whomever wins the Big Ten championship, and they get put in above one of those 3 teams, then I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right. And by the way, I'm not saying I agree with Alabama being placed in the playoff. I'm just saying what I think the committee will do. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that after listening to calls, they think I say something and they just take it as that's my point of view. No, that's what I'm thinking they will do. And I think Alabama, if they lose the SEC title game with 2 losses, let me ask you this, Mark. Okay. If Alabama loses the SEC title game by 3 points, do they have a better shot at getting in the playoffs than Wake Forest going undefeated? Based on the committee. Just based on the committee.
Yeah, they do.
I would put Wake. And that should tell you how the system is broken right there. That should be inexcusable. I'm trying to think well, Mark, that's all I got for you tonight.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
Good talking to you.
Absolutely.
Glad Coastal wasn't ranked.
There you go. Have a good one. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this evening, Mark?
Kevin, what's going on?
Well, I'm just going to have to be honest. As you're quite aware of, hey, my heart runs crimson. You know
Sure.
where my allegiance lies. But I have to be honest with you, Mark. I wasn't. I was shocked by being ranked number 2. And I just wanted to, as far as the gentleman that was just on, as far as the reason why Mississippi State piggybacked Kentucky as well as Wisconsin's eye was because of head-to-head. So
Well, yeah, he knew that.
that's what transpired.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that was what in regards to that.
Sure.
But if Alabama wins out, and say for instance, I don't give a doggone whether they lose to Georgia by 1 or whether they lose to Georgia by 100 in the SEC championship game, Mark, you're quite aware that hey, the other 40 plus states suffer from SEC fatigue, and by that being the case, there's no way in blanketed blank that Alabama would be in the Final Four with 2 losses. Because as you and I have discussed before, well, I was 100% as far as I'm about to say, and you kind of leaned toward it, but you had also stated that, hey, you would not have put it in as in the year that Tua got hurt. And it was a matter of Alabama finished the regular season with 2 losses, didn't make it to the SEC championship game, but they were one of the best 4 teams. But the thing is, they had 2 regular season losses, so hey, that was the burr in the South, and that's the reason why they didn't make it. Would they have a better showing as far as versus LSU than Oklahoma? Yes, sir. But 2 losses, they're not going to do that, Mark. They're not going to do that.
I wouldn't be so sure. You are telling me that if Alabama is impressive the next 4 games, goes to the SEC championship game, and loses to the consensus number 1 team by 1 point, that you're sure that they are not going to make the playoff?
I would have to say yes. Now, if you want to say what my heart would say, my heart would say, okay, they deserve it. But as far as if I'm looking by these new gentlemen and new ladies that happen to be behind the door, I think that, hey, they learn from their predecessors as far as having SEC fatigue. And by that being the case, I don't think that they'll be willing to do it, Mark.
Well,
if they did it, then, as you stated before, the system definitely needs to be blown up.
Well, what they're telling me tonight is that the combination of the eye test and the resume is obviously they value Alabama as the second best resume combination eye test in the country. What has Alabama done to date? They lost on the last play of the game, basically, to Texas A&M, who's a top 15 team in the country. The best win on their schedule is Ole Miss. They blew them away. Now this Florida win is looking worse and worse by the week. And they beat a Miami team that's pretty marginal, but getting a little bit better. So they have, in Tennessee, we'll put Tennessee, Florida, and Miami. They're all 4-4. We'll put them pretty much in the same bucket as being the second, third, and fourth best wins. And then the Ole Miss win stands out right now. And with that, that's the resume that's the second best in the country. So I don't think it is, but based on whatever other factors that they're going to call eye test, I call it eye test / brand, and what they know about the talent, that they vault Alabama number 2. So if based on that they're saying Alabama's the number 2 team in the country, and they're going to go beat Arkansas, LSU, and Auburn to just further substantiate number 2, and then they go play number 1 and lose by 1 point in the SEC championship game, I could see them just dropping from 2 to 4.
Wow. If that were to occur, Mark, I would, once again, just as I was, I guess maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, dumbfounded, I would be even more so if that were to occur. But I just want to throw this out also, Mark, and and I know as the old saying, if ifs were fifths, we'll all be drunk, but as far as 2 what ifs, and that is Alabama wins out, plays Georgia in the national championship, and wins. Alabama beats Georgia, okay? What would be the lowest that Georgia would fall? And then the other question would be, would that being the case, we'll assume that Georgia will still be in the top 4. Would it be set up that Alabama and Georgia would not play in the first round in the playoffs?
Yeah. So the real MVP put it up there too. Yeah. I would think that the committee's going to do everything that they possibly can do to avoid a rematch. So, yeah, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you that they rank the teams regardless of what conference they're in and regardless of whether it's going to set up a rematch. That's what they're going to tell you. But, yeah, they don't want that look for television. They want to avoid that. So
we don't want to have another LSU Alabama twice. So.
Yeah, so they would go with the 1-3 matchup. All right. So if they can possibly do it, which they can justify anything, or they think they can. So your next case scenario was, is there any possible way that Georgia misses the playoff if they lose the SEC championship game?
Well, I'm trying to think, what would the lowest that they would fall? Would it be, okay, you lose the SEC championship game and fall to 4?
Sure. They could lose. They could drop to 4, possibly. They get blown out.
Really just more so looking at numbers. Yeah, because I didn't feel as far as them being eliminated, it was just a matter of just simply wherever they fall. And I was thinking that the lowest that they would be 4. So. Because as far as the defense is concerned, Mark, impressed, more so as far as number 99 is concerned. If we could just get 99 on academic probation as far as for the SEC championship game, that would be greatly appreciated, but I don't think that's going to happen. But that's my biggest concern as far as their defense. Because the only excuse, Mark, and after this, I'm going to exit stage left, is that I don't want to hear from Georgia fans if for whatever reason Georgia don't win it this year, is that Stinson Bennett IV, or as we call him here, the greatest DUI lawyer as far as in the state of Georgia, but I digress, is that I don't want to hear the excuse, Mark, that he is 5'8". I don't want to hear the height excuse, because when he lost to Alabama last year, he was too short. Now he's 6'5", 230 with the rocket arm. But when he loses, he's 5'8", and he's like the Burger King guy with the guy that has the hands that were too small to hold a Whopper. I don't want that to be the excuse as far as if they were to lose.
He's on the football team. I don't understand that as an excuse. If anything, you were basically saying that you have recruited, signed, and are playing the wrong person. If he's not good enough, he's not good enough, then you're not good enough. I don't understand that excuse.
And that was the thing. When they lost, as far as the Alabama game last year, all this, he couldn't see over the offensive line. The defensive linemen, all they had to do was put their hands up to batted passes down.
Sure.
The reason why he threw the interceptions was because he was too short. But he wasn't too short prior to the game, Mark. And that's the thing I didn't understand then, and I'm not going to understand it now if the Bulldogs come up with that excuse again, as far as the fan base, that is.
Well, you as an Alabama fan, all you have to say is, okay, well, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, let's say you're right, your quarterback's not good enough. Okay, you're not good enough. That's like, can we say that every Kansas fan can say, none of our players are good enough, therefore we're not good enough? Yeah, that's the answer.
Wow. Yeah, that's truly something else. But it's been an interesting season, and everything is going to play out. I was really surprised. I didn't know initially, because I really don't look at the other than Alabama schedule. I be honest as far as looking at the other schedules, but I was surprised that Ohio State was going to be on the road versus the University of Michigan. For whatever reason, I just thought it was going to be as far as in Columbus. But that's interesting as far as concluding the season as far as on the road. But then the week prior playing Michigan State in Columbus. So I guess that would be Michigan State's elimination game as far as the Final Four. Because honestly, Mark, unless you know something that I don't know, I can't see Michigan State going to Columbus and beating Ohio State. So.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I would not be surprised by it. This may not necessarily be a vintage Ohio State team, but what happened with the Michigan game is obviously they did not play last year, And the Big Ten decided that they wanted to keep the rotation what it is by year. So actually, Michigan's benefiting from the COVID year because they are now getting to play Ohio State at home back-to-back years.
Wow. Well, it's going to all come out in the wash, Mark. It's going to all come out in the wash. Again, as always, a pleasure to speak with you. Take care. Continue to do what you're doing, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Appreciate that, Kevin. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
You know, the one place where I may differ with Kevin right there, if I'm understanding his last comment, and I didn't want to keep him on the line, is that to me, it doesn't all come out in the wash. Those people that say it all works out, well, obviously it works out. We get to the last game of the season, we play a championship game in conference, and then the committee decides the final four. So yes, that's how it works itself out. They have to select. They have a deadline to select the final four teams. That doesn't mean it worked itself out. That doesn't mean that there's not a number 5 team or a number 6 team that have just as much right and just as a qualified resume as the 4 teams that got selected. It just means that the committee made a decision, which they have to. All right, everyone, welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's next on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Drew. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Drew, I'm doing just fine. What's going on?
Not too much, Joe. Obviously, I want to talk about this Wake Forest ranking a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it shows you that when you don't win very often, it doesn't take much to please you, but I'm pretty happy with it. I think us being ahead of Notre Dame makes a lot of sense. I also think, at least in my mind, even if I don't necessarily agree with this poll, I feel like it's more logical than the AP or some of the other polls. In other words, I see them as basically looking at, Notre Dame has a loss, so they shouldn't quite be ahead of Wake Forest or Oklahoma, but Notre Dame should still be in the mix because they have they're a good football team and they only lost to Cincinnati, who's highly ranked. But to me, that makes a lot more sense than, having Oklahoma at 4, Wake at 10, and then Notre Dame at 9. Because any argument in my mind that you could make for, say, Oklahoma, why can't you make that for Wake or vice versa? But that's really neither here nor there. But one thing, I wanted your opinion because I'm still I wouldn't say casual, but still just a novice college football fan. That's why I like people like you that have more knowledge. But what I found interesting about this ranking is you have 3 ACC teams, and if you count Notre Dame, which you kind of should, there's 4. So Pittsburgh is ranked 25th, and NC State is ranked 19th. So I heard you talking earlier that Wake needs help, and I kind of would like your opinion on that a little more because maybe I'm just being naive, but I actually think this, in a way, is almost set up well for Wake because say we go to Chapel Hill, we beat the Tar Heels, we're 9-0. Presuming State doesn't lose, we're going to be playing a top 20 team. We get that win, hopefully. And then presuming Pitt runs the table, we'll probably have to play another top 20 team in the ACC championship game. So then you have a 13-0 Wake Forest with 2 top 20 college football ranking wins and a string of other, solid UVA, Louisville type wins. So I still would say, how do you keep them out? But I'd like your opinion.
Okay. My statement, to be precise about it, was that Cincinnati needs help. They will need help because they're already at number 6 and their resume is just going to continue to falter while everybody else is strengthened. And that I followed that up by saying that Wake probably or might, whatever my terminology was, needs help. I don't know for sure, but they may need help. Wake does not. First of all, let's start with the premise that we don't know what the committee is going to decide. So hardly any of this that we state can we say this is a 100% guarantee or this is a 0% guarantee. It's all somewhere in a gray area between 10 and 90. I can definitively say if Georgia wins the rest of its games, it's going to the playoffs. Yes. But there are a few statements we could make like that. So, yes, we have never seen a Power 5 champion go undefeated and not be selected in the what will be 8 years of a playoff. But I would doubt that we've seen a Power 5 team at this point in the season be undefeated and ranked this low. That there's been very few, if any. So what I mean by Wake possibly needing, I hope that they don't need help based on the way I perceive it and would select it. They would not need help because we already have a possibility of, we already have one conference champion is going to have a loss for sure. And therefore the other four, in my view, would go if I was making the call. So they would be good to go if they won all their games. But in this situation, I could draw up a number of scenarios, a few. One of the more likely ones would be that Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, and they're both going to the playoff. And then Oklahoma goes undefeated. They're going to the playoff. And then Michigan State, let's make it easy, they go undefeated. There are going to be your four playoff teams, and Wake Forest isn't even going to be, I want to say, considered, because they're not even going to be close to having the credentials of the other teams. So
Yeah, I think that's the one. That is the one scenario where it would be like a no-brainer. They're left out, but
or
so I see
Ohio
what you're saying,
State,
like, they might need help.
or put Ohio State in place of Michigan State, and even though the Buckeyes have a loss, they're going to get selected over Wake Forest.
You think? I don't know. You think so? Just like definitively?
Well, again, no, not 100%, but about 98%. That if Ohio State, which sits right now at number 5, and Wake at number 9, plays a tougher schedule between now and that selection, I don't know how Wake is going to make up ground at not playing as tough a schedule.
I see what you're saying. I do believe, I'm not sure about Ohio State, and I'm not even like making this a point of contention, but I'm just looking at some of my texts from my friends and stuff from Wake, and it looks like at least the last 4 games, I know this is like the classic Wake critique, the season hasn't started, right? But these last 4 games, it's the 14th toughest schedule in the country. So I guess, and maybe I'm being just, looking at the world through Wake Forest colored glasses, but to me, I look at this ranking and I see it more as the committee saying both to Wake and Oklahoma. You're not quite there. You don't deserve it yet. There's still a third of the season left, but if you keep on winning, you'll keep on rising type deal. So once again, it's not that there's not a scenario where Wake isn't left out, but I guess I really wasn't. Like I said, I was pretty optimistic about it. I was like, okay, well, yeah, if we run the table, we'll be, if we're not the top 4, we're going to be the first man left out probably. So it is what it is at this point.
Well, I think if Wake wins the rest of its games, and we're talking about 5 quality wins, that they probably have a 80 or 85% chance of making it. I think it should be 100%, but I think it's more like 85.
I agree. I will say the one thing, just as a Wake fan, that I think some people are missing, and I think this is the point of college football where like you reevaluate, but we keep on saying 4, but I mean, BC is not a bad team, but they've really slowed down, and they don't have a single ACC win. So I think UNC is legit. I think NC State is going to be Wake's toughest opponent without a doubt. And then I think Pitt or whoever we play in the championship, hopefully, but Pitt would be tough. But of course, they're tough games. But I'm saying I think early on in the season, I think that last 4 that Wake has looked a lot scarier than it does now, just because Clemson and BC have kind of not performed to the level you would quite expect them. But once again, it's not easy to go play at Clemson and win. And they're still a good team. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm pretty happy. I can probably let you go after this. I don't have too much to say, but I don't want to just always cry a river about how, oh, the ACC, but it is a little frustrating. And I think this demonstrates my frustration of you have the college football rankings, which once again aren't gospel, but you have 3, if you include Notre Dame, 4 ranked teams. You know, it's not exactly a joke of a conference. And I'm not sure most people picked up on it, but one thing that really annoyed me is when they were announcing the rankings, they praised Notre Dame for beating UNC and UVA. Then when Wake came on, they said, Wake hasn't played anyone. Well, Wake also beat UVA. They're about to play UNC, sure, but they haven't beat them. But does a Syracuse and a Louisville not equal a UNC? My whole point is I'm not trying to sell people that the ACC is some great conference, but it is a very convenient talking point, and especially, like I said, just the glaring hypocrisy to say, oh, Notre Dame number 10, they have these awesome wins against UVA, and then Wake, they go, oh, they haven't played anyone. So it's just stuff like that can get a little annoying, but I'll let you go, Mark. I'll probably call in at some point, but I'm pumped for the game against North Carolina. 1-0 from here on out, and let's go deep.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, another caller brings up some points in which I'm not going to go through with them on the phone, but because I, of course, have all week to sit here and say whatever I want. Anytime I want to say anything, all I have to do is strike up a live stream or cut a video, and I get to say whatever I want. So it's the nicety of having a YouTube channel, whereas opposed to you guys, if you don't choose to have a YouTube channel, then you have to wait until you leave comments in the comment section or call me. But so therefore, that's one of the reasons why I let you guys talk and deliver your points. But the ACC is a bad conference. It just is. It's proven that over the last 3 or 4 years, it's got by far the worst record against the other conferences. Now, I want to make it clear that I do not hold past performance and results against the ACC in 2021, meaning I don't do that when it comes to any conference. I don't say, well, the Pac-12 has been awful for 3 or 4 years, therefore it's awful again. No, all that's in the past. We evaluate this season on this season. And the ACC has been okay. The ACC is 5-9 against the Power 5 and Notre Dame. And I was going to mention this to Drew. Notre Dame's not part of the ACC. So in no way should we be collecting Notre Dame wins as part of the ACC. Actually, Notre Dame's outside the ACC. Therefore, the ACC is playing against Notre Dame. So the ACC's 5-9 against the Power 5. The best wins I can come up with for the ACC would be Boston College beat Missouri and Pitt beat Tennessee. That's the best conference, non-conference win for the ACC right now is Pitt beat Tennessee. Every other conference has better wins outside the conference than the ACC. Now, there are a ton of bad losses for the ACC. Shoot, Georgia Tech lost to Northern Illinois. Pitt lost to Central Michigan. Florida State lost to Jacksonville State. And there are others. So, again, as it stands right now, actually now, let me revise that. The ACC is 5-11 against the other conferences. 5-11. So the ACC is, I think while early in the season, I had to try to draw a distinction between the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12. I think it's pretty clear now. The SEC is the best conference. The Big 10 is playing in such a way that there can now be an argument as to the best conference. But I believe the SEC to be the best conference, the Big 10 a clear number 2. The Big 12 a clear number 3. The ACC number 4, because the Pac-12 is a clear number 5. I think it's pretty, and this is odd, and I don't remember this being the case at other times, where the conference rankings are very clear to me. It's not like 3, 4, and 5, or that's a tough call. No, I think we've seen enough, and we have enough data to see that the Pac-12 is by far the worst conference, and the ACC is not as good as the Big 12, and the Big 12 is not nearly as good as the Big 10, and the Big 10 still needs to make up some ground to get to the SEC. Although, based on out-of-conference results, the Big 10 could make an argument to be as good as the SEC. And for Georgia and Alabama fans, of course, they're going to say, well, we've got the 2 best teams in the country. We're not talking about the 2 best teams in the country. We're talking 1 through 14. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Dylan.
Hey, Dylan, what's going on?
Hello. I just watched the game over the weekend with Michigan State, and I'm just wondering if Michigan can still make it if they went out.
Sure. They can make the playoff. Absolutely. If they win the rest of their games.
Well, can Michigan State and Michigan make it? Is that very possible? Because it's like Michigan, let's just say Michigan State wins out. Michigan doesn't make the obviously the Big Ten championship. Do you think it's possible for them to be 3 and 4?
We're talking about Michigan, correct? Not Michigan State.
Yeah, but I mean, because if we went out and Michigan State doesn't lose, I just don't know what the chances are of Michigan making it.
Oh, so if Michigan wins the rest of its games, but Michigan State also wins the rest of its games. So Michigan's at 11-1, but Michigan State goes on to the Big Ten championship. So you get an 11-1 team that did not make the Big Ten championship game. Well, I would think that Michigan's probably got like a 20 or 25% chance, if that, of making it.
Unless if Michigan State loses in the Big Ten championship game, then I guess that's another chance. It's just I was very disappointed in the Michigan game over the weekend. I feel like they had every chance to win that game.
Oh yeah,
like they literally Harbaugh literally I mean, but yet again, Michigan State. I mean, I know there's a lot of Michigan State fans that watch your channel too, but I think if they didn't have Kenneth Walker, they wouldn't have won that game. Thorne was playing really bad that whole game. I mean, I didn't see anything like really good from Thorne. I really feel like Kenneth Walker carries that team. Let's just say Kenneth gets injured. I really do feel like the Spartans have like no chance. That's just my opinion. But.
No, I understand that. I think Michigan looked prolific on offense for most of the game. Thought they showed that their stars were making plays on defense. And, of course, the lead was 16 points midway through the third quarter.
Yeah, I watched the entire game. I was completely stunned they lost. But I just found out that one of those fumbles, I forgot which one, that McNair made a error on. Cade was in the was it Cade starting, right? Yeah. Cade was in the tent. That's why McCarthy was out there for one play. I just found that out.
Yeah, so McCarthy had the 2 fumbles. The one he got back, and the other one, obviously, he lost. So do you know which one of those he was in the tent for?
Yeah. I guess Cade was in the tent for one of those plays. So that's like, honestly, I don't think they should start McCarthy the rest of the season. I think they should stick to Cade because it's a very big risk at this point if Michigan like has McCarthy out there, because I mean, in big plays, I mean, it's kind of proven that I mean, Cade's not ready. I mean, McCarthy's not ready. JJ, I don't think he's ready yet. But I mean, you never know. I mean, the Michigan games it really comes down to the last game of the season. I don't think Penn State. I mean, we can still lose that game. Don't get me wrong, but like, I really do feel like if we really beat Ohio State bad, or it's close, whichever way. I mean, I think we're still gonna lose the Ohio State game. I'm going to that game, but I really do feel like if Michigan convincingly wins that Ohio State game, and Michigan State somehow loses a game, but a lot has to go in our way, obviously. But I really do feel like Michigan can make it. But I still think we're gonna lose to Georgia or Alabama. Maybe not Alabama, but Georgia. If we're 4, I think we're gonna get blown out. If we obviously get there. But I don't think Oregon should be 4. That's another issue I have.
Well, you're going to need a lot of help to get there.
Yeah, oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
But I just don't think Oregon should be 4. That's I mean, I don't like Oklahoma. I think they've been doing really bad the whole season. But Oregon lost a pretty bad team, so I don't know how they're 4 right now. I mean, they lost to Stanford. I don't think they're doing any better, are they?
No, Stanford's not good. They're 3-5. Oregon is number 4 because they beat Ohio State. That's simple. That's what the entire resume is based on almost exclusively. Sure, they beat a Fresno State team that the committee's got ranked at 22 or 23. But besides that, that's the whole resume right there. That's it.
But like the game was so close. That's why I'm wondering why. It's just so confusing how Oregon's that high. I feel like even though I don't like Ohio State because I'm a Michigan fan, I really feel like Ohio State would probably like really murder Oregon right now, but we won't know because they already lost. But I will say this: I got a couple more things to say. I really do feel like, and most people won't agree with this, I think Michigan has a very good chance this year because I do feel like our quarterback has improved this whole season. But the defense was very exposed in that Michigan State game, and that's definitely a big issue for Michigan right now. I don't know if you watched that game, the whole game or not, but
I did.
I think Michigan's defense, their run defense was not doing good at all that game. I mean, you stopped one of them touchdowns from Kenneth Walker. I feel like it would have made a big difference. But then one more thing that I do want to say is that did you see that touchdown? The fumble from Thorne, and we got a touchdown. What was your opinion on that play? Because I think he fumbled in the end zone.
I don't necessarily think he fumbled, but I think that once it was called on the field that he fumbled, I didn't think that there was any way that you could really tell on the replay definitively that he did not fumble. So I don't believe that they should have reversed it.
Actually, I do got one more thing. Do you think they deserve to be at 7, Michigan? You think they deserve it because it was a close game?
Yeah, I think I've got them at 7 or 8. I don't remember. So I've got them just about right there.
The only ones that really All right. I was just curious because I was surprised to see him at 7. I thought they were going to push him down really far. I thought they're going to be like 10 or 11 in the college football. But you never know. Michigan can make it. Ohio State can make it. Michigan State can make it. So it comes down to those 3 right now.
There you go.
But all right. Thank you for thank you for letting me call.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for the call. Have a good one.
Have a good rest.
All right. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Steve.
Hey, Steve. What's going on?
How's it going, sir? Just quick observations on the rankings. I really believe the committee got it right as far as not putting Cincinnati within the top 4. I know the AP had him at number 2. I think, I believe they would have put him at number 2. The tie would have caved into the media as far as the media's influence. But I really believe even Cincinnati at being number 6, I think was still overhyped. I'm really surprised how Oklahoma is behind them. I think a Caleb Williams Oklahoma team is much more dominant team than Cincinnati in those positions there. But the other surprise to me was Alabama number 2 with the one loss and their struggle against A&M in Florida. But just a real quick point, I was wondering your take on this. Let's say there's chaos at the top at the end of the year, and you have an undefeated Wake Forest ACC championship win, then an undefeated Cincinnati, and the number 4 slot is open. Who do you put in?
Between Wake Forest with an undefeated record?
Undefeated Wake Forest, undefeated Cincinnati, and you're on the committee and you have the deciding vote who has the number 4 slot.
Yeah, I've already looked at the schedules, and I ran a video a few weeks ago comparing Cincinnati and Wake Forest. And while their schedules are comparable to date, when it's all said and done, the schedules won't even be close. I would vote for Wake Forest. I wouldn't even have to think about it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I just don't want to see a Cincinnati team in there. Really, until we have the 12-team playoff. I'd be fine with it, but not in this format right now.
Absolutely.
But
I'm right there with you.
well, thanks for your time, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate the call. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you, sir.
I want to remind everyone that we've got Patreon for $5 a month. So the deal is, if you like to put down a few bucks on the ball games, I pick them pretty well. 13-5 against the spread this past weekend. 107-69 is the record against the spread this season. 107-69. So if you want to do a little math equation, take 69, multiply it by 100. So if you put down $100 on every game, that would be 69 times 100, and then take 107 times 91, because the Vegas payout is 91 cents on the dollar against the spread. So 13-5 last week, 107-69 for the year. Plus you get the 12-pack of selections from our 20 media members each and every week that I, in fact, have to work on after we get done here tonight. Okay, welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello, who's on the line?
Keller?
Yeah.
Keller.
Hey, Keller, what's going on?
I don't know if we just got done talking about this, but let's say Michigan State, Georgia, the 5 teams that are ranked that are undefeated currently: Wake, Oklahoma,
Okay.
Georgia. Basically, my point is, which of those 5 teams gets left out if they all run the table? I'd have to go with Cincy, because I just think the committee does not like the group of 5. We've seen how the ACC is treated Clemson with a weak ACC schedule.
Yeah, so the last 2 teams that would get in would be Cincinnati and Wake. They would be at the bottom, the least considered. But if you compare,
Georgia would be in at 1, Michigan State would be 2, and I think Oklahoma would be 3.
yes.
So I think Wake Forest would get in over Cincinnati. I'm
absolutely.
sorry.
They've got a better.
Sure.
They're going to have a much better schedule.
And if the committee had SMU or Houston ranked, that'd obviously be a different story, I think. But maybe Houston could get in the top 25 before the 8th American Championship game. And if Cincinnati can get a win over a ranked Houston in that game, then there might be an argument for Cincinnati. But, I mean, I also have a hard time seeing Wake go undefeated. I think they're going to go at least 1-1 between North Carolina and NC State.
Yeah, this is all fun conversation about
Hill,
Wake.
really.
This is all fun conversation about Wake, but most likely the probabilities are so stacked against Wake winning 5 consecutive games against the teams that they've got to face. But it's fun conversation, and I hope they do it.
I mean, I'd love to see it, Honestly, I'm from the West Coast area, so I'm kind of really wanting Oregon to get in for the Pac-12, because I'm ready for the Pac-12 playoffs out to end. He talked about how the Pac-12 is the worst Power 5 conference right now.
Yes.
Even though they host the best non-conference win in the country with Oregon's win over Ohio State.
Very true.
So another question I wanted to bring up, if you don't mind, is if Oregon, let's say Oregon keeps squeaking by teams and Ohio State just blows everyone out. I think Ohio State definitely passes, because they would blow out Michigan State and Michigan, but I don't see the Buckeyes blowing out either of those teams. As a matter of fact, I see them losing at least one of those. Ohio State, I was never sold on them when they started blowing out teams. I know that you like Ohio State, so this may be a little hard for you to take, but I just never could be completely sold on the Buckeyes, because they beat a bunch of nobodies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand your take on that, but let's understand one thing, that while Ohio State is blowing out the likes of Indiana and Maryland and Rutgers, nobody else is doing that. Do you realize that? That nobody else is doing that to those teams. I do realize that,
but I mean, Michigan State has an 18-point win over Rutgers. And
18, but yeah, but that, I watched that game, and that was a reasonably competitive game. Ohio State just annihilated Rutgers. They had 45 points on the board at halftime. It wasn't like they could have scored 100 if they wanted. They could have done whatever they wanted to. Indiana's another example. Michigan State.
And that's what tells me, I think, when Michigan State goes into Columbus in a couple weeks.
Can I finish my statement?
Yeah.
Michigan State had a 17-15 lead on Indiana with just a couple minutes left. They won that game 20-15. Ohio State had 44 points on the board on Indiana at halftime. And the same thing against Maryland. Maryland's competing fairly well against just about everybody else, excluding Iowa in the Big Ten. And Ohio State put up 66 points on Maryland. I'm just saying that even though those teams aren't that good, nobody else, including Cincinnati barely beat Indiana. Granted, Michael Penix was in the game, but Ohio State's obliterating those teams and nobody else is.
I understand what you're saying. And I think if you go off that, I mean, just based off that, you're probably thinking, oh, when Michigan State goes into Columbus in a couple weeks, they're going to get annihilated, just like all those other teams.
No, I don't think so.
I think that'll be a more competitive game. But I guess one last question I wanted to ask, if you don't mind, is
Sure.
Who do you think is Ohio State is more likely to lose to, Michigan State or Michigan?
That is a great question because obviously one's at home and one's on the road, but I'm still going to say Michigan State.
And you have to, another thing that you also consider is that Michigan State has had success in Columbus. I mean, you go back to 2015, that game-winning field goal, then 2011. Yes, I know Ohio State wasn't great that year, but Ohio State, yes, there was the 2013 Big Ten championship game too, but Michigan State has done pretty well in Columbus compared to a lot of other teams.
Yep.
And I know we really don't look at that, but it's not impossible to win in Columbus. Oregon showed that, I mean, I always consider Columbus, Ohio Stadium, the Horseshoe, a really great stadium and a great place to play. And I'd love to go there someday. But I just think I'd like to see. I think Michigan might really want that game against Ohio State that year. I mean, Jim Harbaugh talked about all season he wants to do it. And yes, I know that there's a complete difference between him doing it and him saying it. But I think this could be Michigan's year. We'll see.
Okay.
So
well, thanks for
I don't
the call.
think it's going to be Ohio State and Indianapolis from the East. That's my final opinion of it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But thank you for your time, and I'm sorry if I got interrupted or.
Oh, not at all.
I
No,
just
I
had a little
appreciate
bit
you
I wanted
calling
to say,
in.
but-
Thanks for your take. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
All right, you too.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Michigan State in Columbus to take on the Buckeyes. Wow. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's Exploring with Ben. How you doing tonight?
Hey, Ben. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I missed the first part of the show. I got stuck a little bit late at work, so I didn't get to see your initial reaction to the rankings because I had to go back and actually watch them myself. But I can know you're a Buckeyes fan. So what is your thoughts about their look this year on head-to-head? I mean, at this point, it's early, obviously, in the season. So.
I think it's completely fair. They've done the same thing that I've done with Oregon and Ohio State, although I believe I've got them a spot lower. I think I've got them 5-6, maybe 4-5. I don't remember. So they've pretty much done the same thing I've done with Oregon and Ohio State in my rankings. Really, the three things that stand out to me is number one, that Alabama's number 2, and they don't have the second best resume in college football. So they're obviously favoring Alabama based on talent, eye test, all that. And the more they talk about eye test, the more that I think that really means brand name, image, prestige, and TV ratings, and basically talent evaluation, not eye test on the field. Because Alabama's resume is good, it's decent, but it's not, I don't think, the number 2 resume in the country. So that's what struck me, is Alabama's a little bit too high, and they've basically positioned Alabama in such a way that they could lose the SEC championship game close and still make the playoff with 2 losses. Observation number 2 would be Cincinnati is in a difficult spot, and that was really the team I wanted to see ranked more so than everybody else, because everybody else outside of maybe Wake controls its own destiny. So Cincinnati at 6 tells us a lot that they're in a tough spot. And then finally that Oklahoma's at 8, even though they can play themselves up, they're fine as long as they win. It just basically tells us that the committee has not been impressed with Oklahoma, obviously.
Oh, no, I mean, and I agree. I mean, I saw Alabama too, and I was kind of like, how. But at the same time, I saw Oregon at 4, and as a Ducks fan, even I was like, I was expecting 6 to 7, to be honest. That's kind of my feel, just because of the inconsistency of it on the field. So I'm in the same boat. I was a little, with Alabama, I was kind of like, I don't know. But regardless of that, did you notice something? I don't know if you pay attention to it. I know, like, FPI, you go over that all the time. Did you see the comparison with Ohio State and Oregon, the strength of schedule and strength of record differential?
I did.
I don't know where those numbers are coming from.
I don't either.
But Oregon's is like way up higher than Ohio State's, which is weird. I don't know if that's because they feel the league is quote unquote more competitive. I don't know where those numbers come from at all. It was like a ridiculously lopsided number in strength for Oregon. I don't know where that comes from.
So I'm not really challenging Ohio State's number at 74 of strength of schedule, because their schedule's backloaded. They just finally played somebody really good this past weekend, Penn State, and even their record has obviously taken a hit in their standing. And I don't believe Penn State was even ranked in their top 25. Maybe they were. I don't know. I don't remember where Penn State was ranked, if they were ranked. But anyway,
they were 23-ish or something like that. Something like that.
I don't know that they were ranked. Anyway, I will say that, I'm looking at this schedule for Oregon, and did they base this completely on them playing Ohio State on the road? Is that why they've got the 22nd ranked schedule in the country? How is that possible? They played Fresno State. Okay. They played Fresno State, Ohio State, of course, Stony Brook, Arizona, Stanford, Cal, UCLA, Colorado. Colorado sucks. They're horrible. They're one of the worst teams in FBS football. UCLA is down to 5-4 now. They're a top 50, 60 team, and they're the second best win they've got. Then they've got Cal. They're no good. Stanford, that's the loss. They're 3-5. Arizona's one of the worst teams in known existence. They've lost 20 games in a row. I am dumbfounded by this number 22 ranking, strength of schedule.
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, again, I'm a Ducks fan. Even I was like, well, wait, that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I'm like, yeah, like you say, maybe they're basing off the Ohio State win. But then why is Ohio State so low? Because they went against Oregon. That should almost equal it out. So, yeah, I mean, it could be because of the backload for Ohio State, too, with the strength of record and stuff like that. I see those numbers sometimes, and I'm confused by them because some of them just don't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know where they get those from.
I'm not usually confused, but when it comes to this one, I am spellbound. I have no idea. Because Ohio State on the other side. So Ohio State's 52 spots behind them in schedule strength, and they played each other. So what's kind of odd about that is that if they're ranking Ohio State to be a much stronger game for Oregon than Oregon for Ohio State, but Oregon beat Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like, are they giving Oregon a ton of credit for Ohio State? And I mean a ton of credit, like a top 3 win in the country, but they're not giving Ohio State as much credit for having Oregon on its schedule, but Oregon beat Ohio State. Like, it doesn't make any sense in a sense. And even though, like you say, Ohio State's schedule is backloaded, they have now played Penn State. Minnesota's a 6-2 team that they've got ranked number 20 in the country. The committee's got Minnesota number 20 in the country. So that trumps Oregon's second best win and Penn State. I don't get it.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm throwing it out there because I'm like, I don't pay attention to those. Just like the FPI.
That sounds like a good video.
Sometimes those numbers are just. But I will tell you, as you are probably one of the most unbiased Ohio State fans, at least, I'll have to watch your actual reaction, but don't read the comment section because there's a bunch of whining going on. But to all the OSU fans, it'll work itself out. Oregon will probably, unfortunately, lose somewhere along the line, like at Utah. And boom, Ohio State will bump up. Ohio State's schedule is stronger. It'll work itself out. So to everyone who's worried, relax.
Well, are you able to kind of remove yourself from the situation and analyze that? What do you think is more important, the head-to-head or the better resume?
I mean, I agree with all the points they're supposed to say: resume, head-to-head, and even the eye test, which is supposed to be on the field. But I get your point of looking at like brand name, potential talent on the roster.
Well, the point
And
I'm
I
making,
would
not to
not wanna see a
interrupt you,
committee.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just to clarify my point about brand name and all that other bit, I don't think that that should be considered, but I think they are considering it. I think that that's their unconscious or maybe conscious bias. I don't think any of that stuff should be considered, but I think it is.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I agree. No, I agree. It shouldn't be, but I do think somewhere along the line it kind of is, and it shouldn't be at all. Period. Because but I mean, at the end of the day, I think strength of schedule definitely makes a difference. Head to head, of course, plays an important role, and eye test plays a role. So, again, it's the first ranking, so we have to see what happens, especially as as Ohio State, as their strength of record gets harder. Same with the other teams. Are they going to drop out of the rankings? So it's so early. I'm not even going to quote it. I'm just saying no one needs to worry at this point. The season will work itself out, and yeah, I'm surprised myself a little bit. So,
All right, sir. Well, I appreciate the call, Ben.
no, you have a great night there, and enjoy the rest of your time.
You too. Thank you so much. Appreciate the super chat coming in from our guy Bilal, who says, Mark, this committee is a fraud. Alabama should not be anywhere close to number 2. Well, I would somewhat back that up in a certain sense. I'm not quite to that level where I believe that they should be close to number 2. I've got Alabama at number 4. But yeah, I don't get the number 2 justification. And some people, I skipped over Mississippi State when I was going over Alabama's quality wins. Yes, Mississippi State's a good win. I forgot about Mississippi State. They won that game handily, 49-9. So Alabama's beaten a really good Ole Miss team. That's not great. They have lost a couple games now and almost lost to Tennessee as well. But Ole Miss is good. It's a quality win. It's Alabama's best win, and ironically, their most dominant win against a good team. Now they've beaten Florida, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Tennessee, Miami. You'd put all those teams in roughly the same bucket of teams. The committee loves Mississippi State for some reason. Mississippi State, I like them too. I think they're good. But they love Mississippi State. Mississippi State's beaten Texas A&M, Kentucky. That's it. Tennessee and Kentucky. Or, I'm sorry, Kentucky and Texas A&M. Mississippi State didn't play. No. Kentucky and Texas A&M are the big Mississippi State wins. Okay. They lost to Memphis. They beat Louisiana Tech by a point. Okay, other Mississippi State win, North Carolina State. So Texas A&M, Kentucky, North Carolina State. 3 good wins for MSU. But they lost to Memphis. They got annihilated by Alabama. And they barely slipped by Louisiana Tech. They also lost to... Who they lose to? LSU. So a little high on Mississippi State is the committee. A little bit. But this Oregon strength of schedule at 22. Every team in the SEC is a tougher schedule than Oregon right now. So there's 14 that should be ahead of them already. I don't know. I'm going to have to look up strength of schedule tonight. Unless I just get done with the whatever we've had today. I started recording at 11 in the morning, so we're going to be at like 10 hours. I may just be done for the night. Or we may work on some videos because I really got to figure out strength of schedule and how Oregon's got the 22nd toughest schedule in the country. Hayden is asking, who's the most underrated team that can still make the college football playoff? Meaning in the rankings, I'm going to take that as the lowest ranked team. I believe, I might be wrong about this, but I believe the lowest ranked team in the initial rankings that made the playoff, and this would be a great video to cut as well, which I can't do it tomorrow because I'm slammed from like 10 in the morning to 10 at night. But I would love to post a video where we look at past seasons and see where teams came from. 2014 Ohio State, I'm almost positive they were only like 14, something like that. But we'd have to go through all the teams that made the playoff and see who was the lowest ranked in the initial rankings that still made the playoff. Okay. The college football playoff rankings. Here we go. The lowest ranked team that could still possibly make it. Okay, let's run it down. Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Michigan, Oklahoma, Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, Baylor. Okay. How about Auburn? Auburn and Texas A&M are both 6-2. Auburn only has one loss in the SEC. Texas A&M has two losses in the SEC, but Texas A&M also has the tiebreaker against Alabama. So let's say Texas A&M wins all of its games. Auburn wins all of its games, except they have to play each other, of course. And Auburn beats Alabama. So the winner of this game between Auburn and Texas A&M under those conditions, Alabama would have two losses. A&M would have two losses if they beat Auburn. Auburn would have two losses in the division. So it'd be a three-way tie between Texas A&M, Auburn, and Alabama. Get out your tiebreaker book. They would all have the same division record as well because they would have all lost the games in division. So they'd have the same division record. I think Alabama would be odd man out automatically because they lost to the other two involved in the tie. So that's a scenario in which Auburn could get to the SEC championship game, and so could Texas A&M. So Ole Miss has lost two games in the SEC, and they lost to Alabama and Auburn. So it's going to be tough for them, having already lost to two of those, but they could. So the group of Auburn, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss, Hayden, to answer your question, are the lowest ranked teams that could make the playoff. Kentucky cannot make the playoff. They've lost two games. Yeah, they're done. Yeah. So there you go. That is my answer for you. The three teams in the SEC Western Division, they're all basically in the same bucket. And Auburn's got a leg up because they lost one of their two games out of conference against Penn State. All right. Good stuff here from everyone. Let's go back to the phone lines. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
This is me.
Yeah. Can you repeat your name again? I didn't quite catch it.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my name is Mike.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Good. I've been watching you for a couple of years. I'm a actual enemy, I suppose, Michigan Wolverine fan.
Well, I appreciate
And,
you still watching
found
me
you
then.
through-
Wow, that takes a lot of perseverance from you.
Found you from Steve Dace. So I like the report you two have. It's very educational. It's fun to watch, and I'm a bit like Steve myself. Living 50 here, and I'm a bit of a nihilist. Watching these Michigan games, better part of 20 some years, and I'm just a little overwhelmed of this game on Saturday, having blown the lead that we had. Something no one has talked about at all is the fact that Michigan in the fourth quarter was just gassed. They're exhausted, and no excuse. But that's what just destroyed me and the fans, and I'm sure the team.
Well, that is something that I've mentioned a few times, and I mentioned it actually. I don't know if Steve's released our recording from this afternoon on Michigan podcast, but I just basically made the statement that Mel Tucker has kind of bragged all season, and when I say brag, that's not a knock on him. He's backed it up that his team was going to be mentally tougher, physically tougher, and going to be in better condition than all the teams that they play. And that must have taken hold in the fourth quarter, because anybody that's played football will tell you that, we think about all these other things that go on, strategy and skill position players and all this stuff in the fourth quarter. But one of the big, maybe not as much as old style football, but still a major factor, because there's so many substitutions now, but still a major factor is the conditioning of the two teams.
Right. Yeah. And that's Mel Tucker. I mean, that's what he's, spouting about, and it's, working out for him. They had more gas, and being home, of course, in that insane crowd definitely helped. Don't want to whine and complain about that one brutal call, because we had so much more time left in that game, of course. And we did deliver to some degree. So my last big comment for you would be this weekend, obviously, hypothetically, your Buckeyes. What would you be most concerned about if you had to play Michigan State this weekend, or same thing, Michigan this weekend versus, in a month? What would be a Buckeyes, analyst concern, I suppose, if it was like this week?
Okay, for Michigan State, even though I respect their defense, they're bend but don't break, and I think that they do a nice job of tackling in space.
Right.
They compete for the football on the outside. All those things, I would not be that concerned about the defense. Not that they wouldn't be able to compete, but Ohio State's offense is overpowering. As long as they executed in the red zone and did not kick field goals like they did against Penn State, I think the offense would be fine. The concern would be the defense. Even though that Ohio State's defense is improving considerably, they have not faced Kenneth Walker. And the combination of Kenneth Walker and those two outside receivers, Reed and Naylor, when Peyton Thorne's on, which he wasn't totally on against Michigan, but when he was on, he made some throws. He made that 4th and 4 throw that was beautiful. It was a dime. Ohio State could get torched by that Michigan State offense.
Right. Interesting. And vice versa to the Michigan point. I think I back in the day I played high school football like a lot of us did. I played offensive line, and it all starts with that. And if you're not consistent, you're not going to compete against the big boys ever. So my concern would be that, of course, and then of course having juice in the fourth quarter, and of course lastly not kicking more than 3. So I favorite over my Wolverines at this. Most years I'd probably 14, 18 point favorite. But I feel there's a palpable chance to actually beat the Buckeyes. Again, I'd give them a sizable favorite, of course. And I'm sure Vegas will for that very purpose, just to kind of, tempt folks to place bets. But it's that fourth quarter last 3 days ago. I just was like, who is this team? And I was actually afraid of it when I saw everyone raise their hand fourth quarter. For some reason, I'm like, how are we going to manage to lose this? Are we going to do that to ourselves again? And sure enough, that's what happened. So lastly, what would you say about Michigan if we played them this weekend. Is it the same thing as Michigan State or not at all? Is it a different strength that they would provide for the Buckeyes, do you think?
When I looked at Michigan State before they played, I just looked at these teams and I thought they're very similar teams.
Right.
They
Right.
both have top 2 to 3 offensive lines in the conference. They both, even though they're fairly unheralded players, especially Michigan, because they haven't thrown the ball as much, so their wide receivers haven't put up the kind of numbers that Reed and Naylor have. They showed in that game how good they are. And obviously the 1-2 punch of Haskins and Corum up until this game was nearly as effective as a tandem as Kenneth Walker. The two quarterbacks are fairly similar, although I think Peyton Thorne is more elusive and a little bit better runner and just more elusive, not necessarily that he looks to run, but he can avoid more contact and pressure in the backfield. And up until this game, I would have said that he was a better passer, but I tell you, Cade McNamara, I was super impressed with him threading tight windows. His anticipation. There was one throw that he made down the middle that I don't think anyone made a whole lot of, really blew up as some amazing play. But to me, he had a helmet in his chest and he delivered a ball in a tight window that, sometimes you get amazed when you see the quarterback and where the receiver and the defenders were when the ball's coming out of their hand, to really understand and appreciate how much anticipation it took to know where the receiver is going to be, not right now, but where he's going to be in 2.5 seconds and where those defenders are going to be. And he made a couple throws like that I just thought those are NFL. Those are throws that you see Brady and Rodgers make on, and I'm not elevating him to that level by any stretch because they make them every other play, but made those kind of throws. So he was a much better player on Saturday than I've ever seen before.
Right. And if he keeps that play up, that will keep JJ on the bench.
Yeah. Well, it should.
So, you'd think. So, yeah, this is why this is the year with so much parity. It's ridiculous. I mean, 1 through 10 easily is just, I've never seen this in modern, last 10, 20 years maybe, where every single team is so decent in their own way. This is the year, I don't know if you agree, where that 1 through 8 playoff. And I'm not just saying that because of my Wolverines. I'm not just saying that because they're holding 7th, barely. Or even 8 for that matter, after last weekend's loss. But could you imagine a 1 through 8, 2 through 7, and just work its way out? That would be amazing.
Oh, it'd be phenomenal. I'm the guy that always argues for the 18 playoff, but not based on competition. So the argument you're making right now is it would just be a phenomenal playoff, and I completely agree. I make it based on fairness. Even if we had 50-0 blowouts in other years in the first round, I would still say this is what is fair and this is what is just to represent all the conferences, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right. This would be the year that we could anticipate the games would most likely be great.
Yeah, it would be insane. That's what I'm saying. This is the one year that I can remember. It'd be insanity. It'd be pandemonium everywhere.
Yeah.
But and that brings me to my last comment. The preseason is a joke. My Wolverines are always ranked 19th or 12th, or many years in the 80s and 90s, 2nd or 4th. And many of those years, it doesn't pan out. The year runs itself, of course, and to see who's who. They got to stop doing it. And I know it's magazines. I know they all sell, but they're paper. I don't think magazines sell as much as they did 10 or 20 years ago. But, the name, and as great of a brand as we have as Michigan fans, that doesn't preclude what's going to happen throughout the year. So it's nonsense. And I'm just speaking because we get excited and every year because we like to abuse ourselves. It's just, but we're not the only team in the country. There's other teams, of course, that go through this too. I did not see Florida State, starting out this year the way they did. Same with Clemson. They've kind of fallen off the face of the earth a little bit. And I'm sure they're ranked in the top 3 or 5, if memory serves, back in August. So I'd just like to see the preseason just go, and let's just do a test and a ranking based off your week 1, your week 2. You know.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate the call.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Come down to Florida. We just moved months ago. We're in Melbourne right now. So
Oh, man.
The ocean usually cures all wounds, but not last
that
week.
sounds,
I'm like Steve. I'm a bit harsh on my boys.
Well, I got to tell you, if you would have made that comment to me between May and September, I'd be like, no, I'm good where I'm at here in Connecticut. But, it's right about this time of year. This week or last week was about the time that it went suddenly from 75 to 50. Then I'm like, yeah, I can do without this because 25's coming.
Sadly enough, I love 50s. Sadly enough, I love 50s and 40s. I'm actually Canadian.
Oh, okay.
I can't do 5 minutes. I can't do 5 months of Michigan weather in Bay City, Michigan. Little
There you
shout out to
go.
Bay City. But yeah, no, I'll let you go, and I thank you for what you do, and I thank you for your objectivity, in spite of the very fact that you are a Buckeye. So I respect
I appreciate it.
and I thank you.
Have a good one.
All right.
All right. We got 2 on the line. Let's take these 2 calls, and then we will wrap it up from there. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, my name's Shannon.
Hey, Shannon.
I'm from Alabama.
What's going on?
This is my first time calling the show. I'm actually enjoying the show.
Well, I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, and I know I've read a lot of the comments. I was watching on the YouTube thing there, and I watched some of the college football playoffs from ESPN. I know people get upset with seeing Alabama number 2. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm an Alabama fan. I grew up as an Alabama fan. And this is, just be honest, is Georgia's number 1 because they haven't lost. And I would say they've earned that spot. Okay? But how would it look as, okay, Alabama has the 1 loss to Texas A&M. And Texas A&M wasn't ranked. I understand that. The SEC has always beat the SEC pretty much every year for the last heaven knows how long. And you've pretty much had a 1-loss team in there and have 2 teams that are undefeated that are looking in. I think if Clemson, their only loss would have came to Georgia and say they were at that 1-loss spot with Alabama, would they still be in that top 4 as of right now? I guess that's what I'm asking. And I know people are getting upset, because they're tired of seeing Alabama and, Georgia in there. But if Alabama plays Georgia in the SEC championship, which is what most people down this way are looking for to happen, if Alabama beats Georgia and beats them close, say by a field goal, where does that leave Georgia, in the playoffs? Are they out? And don't get me wrong, if Alabama loses another game, they're out. I would be more concerned as an Alabama fan of us losing to Auburn than Georgia at the moment, just because of the kind of atmosphere that game brings. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. I see what you're saying. Here's the deal for me is that the only reason I have an issue with Alabama not being the number 2 team is that I don't believe that the resume is number 2. I've got them at number 4, but I do believe that Alabama is the second best team in the country. So there's a difference there. I believe Alabama is the second best team in the country. I just don't think that they've proven it or earned that based on their resume right now.
I'm like you. I have Alabama at number, as far as my pick, I'm a diehard Alabama fan, but I still put us at number 4, maybe even number 5, because we have to play Georgia. But in the SEC championship game, we still have to play Auburn. I believe that if Alabama wins out, they're in. But they're going to have to win out and beat Georgia to get in.
Probably.
I think I think that, you know, Georgia's pretty much in. I don't think really they have. They don't. I mean, they can pretty much win their regular season schedule the rest of the season. You know, it's just what's going to happen in the SEC championship game. If Auburn wins out and beats Alabama, I know it comes down to that three-way tie, but I believe Auburn will be going to the SEC championship over Texas A&M because I have a feeling Auburn's going to beat Texas A&M. You know, it's a I don't know. I don't like to use the words that most people look at. It's like which Saban assistant was going to beat Saban first. I mean, we all knew it was going to happen. I just figured it was going to be Kirby Smart to be the first one to do it, you know, and not Jimbo Fisher. But you know, it is what it is. You know, I believe that if you in watching that Alabama Texas A&M game, you know, it was all going to boil down to who came down to who had the ball last. And that's the way the Alabama-Georgia game's been the last 5 or 6 times that they played each other. It's who's had the ball last has won that game. That's the way it's been. I think as of right now, I'm more concerned with losing to Auburn because of it being the kind of game it is. And, you know, it's not the Iron Bowl itself is, unless you've ever been to one, I mean, it's husband versus wife, kids versus kid, whatever, you know, and you grow up down here and you pick one. You pick one. You know, that's just it, you know.
Well, sir,
I think Ohio State.
Yep, I do appreciate the call.
You know.
So thanks for calling into the show. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right. The big finale. Who's on the line here at the Voice of College Football?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Willie. I'm from Ohio State.
Hey, Willie.
78, and I watch all college football. I'm 73 and retired. I got 50 big screen, 3 50-inch big screens in my living room, and I DVR and watch all these games on replay. 2 things I'd like to talk to you most about, although that caller from Alabama I thought was right on, but he failed to mention that Alabama barely beat Florida this year because of a 2-point conversion.
Sure.
And they're still ranked number 2. Now, as far as the Michigan State game go, Michigan, Harbaugh is their version of John Cooper. He takes good players and manages to lose games. Now, that game against Michigan was the first game all year their quarterback has hit any passes, and he really never hit any over 15 yards if you look back at the tape. He had a 93-yarder that traveled about 8 yards, and the guy ran the rest of the way. He's really no threat to pass. But yet, Michigan's defense played 2 deep safeties the entire game instead of 1 safety and the other one at the line to stop the run. If you're going to play Michigan State, you need to stop the run. Anybody that knows college or pro football, the first thing you got to do is stop the run. And Michigan, for some unknown reason, kept 2 deep safeties, even when they were in running situations. And I was just confused I personally think if Penn State is healthy the way they played against us their last game, that they're probably the second best team to us in the Big Ten. When they play Michigan State and Michigan will definitely be lucky to get a win. Michigan barely beat Rutgers by 7 points. They would have lost to Northwestern if Northwestern wouldn't have fumbled running out the clock. Michigan State hadn't beat a team with a winning record till they beat Michigan. Michigan State's quarterback threw for less than 200 yards. And they have a couple decent receivers. But you do not need to play 2 high safeties. If you play Michigan State, put your guys on the line and stop that guy and make him throw. Because he's not going to beat you throwing. Now I'd like to talk a bit about our play calling at the goal line. For some unknown reason, why do we keep running Henderson inside the tackles when he's so fast? And why do we go with all tight ends when we get to the 8-yard line? If we put wide receivers in there, we're going to take blockers away from the line. Our first 2 possessions against Penn State, 88 killed us both. First he fumbled, then he missed that block, and 23 got it like an 8-yard loss. So we went the whole first quarter without a touchdown. We usually get a touchdown in like 3 or 4 minutes. We didn't get a touchdown in the first and fourth quarter in that game. Now, a lot of that had to do with Penn State's defense. Penn State's probably got the best defense in the Big Ten when they are healthy. And their quarterback is healthy, and they're not turning the ball over. But our play calling inside the goal line, down by the goal line, was just terrible in that game. When we kicked 4, I can't remember the last time we kicked 4 field goals. Maybe you could tell me, but I sure can't remember one. And if you look at CJ, another problem is CJ Stroud. What is his rushing totals for the year? I don't think he has 70 yards rushing. And if you've got a quarterback that is not a threat to run in today's college football, you've got some issues there when you're playing good teams. There's been several times where he's been able to run and he hasn't ran the ball. And he could have easily ran for yardage. So I was just wondering what you think about all that.
Well, in regards to Ohio State's performance in the red zone, I certainly think that to get a back like Henderson's talent on the perimeter makes sense, but there are certainly plays that are designed, trap plays and others, to spring a fast running back through the middle. So you do have that. You make a good point about obviously spreading out the formation and taking defenders away from the box. So spreading out the defense, the Detroit Lions were the first ones to do it with Barry Sanders, where they basically spread you out, and that just created natural running lanes for him. So, I get your point there. Ohio State doesn't like to kick field goals. Ryan Day doesn't like to kick field goals unless he's forced to. And in those situations, he had 4th and longs and had to kick the field goal. In the last one, obviously, he was extending to a 9-point lead. And that's the reason he kicked that field goal. I, like you, have said the entire season, ever since I saw Penn State play Wisconsin, that I thought that they had the best defense in the conference. But they are beat up a little bit. And we'll see what they do with little incentive to win the division the rest of the year. Those would be my basic thoughts, sir.
What about Michigan State running double high safety, or Michigan running the double high safeties the whole game against Penn State or Michigan State, and not putting that guy up in the box and stopping their running attack? Their whole team is based. They're up 16 points in the third quarter.
Sure,
that reminded me of John Cooper. Jim Harbaugh, I hope he stays at Michigan his whole career, because I don't know what he's doing up there.
Well,
he's got a decent team. He's got a receiver that gets 100-some yards that didn't even have a catch going into that game. Where's that guy been all year?
Exactly. Yeah, he was lethal.
I just didn't know. I don't understand. What would Ohio Stadium do if they took out C.J. Stroud in that Penn State game and put a backup in, and the guy fumbled his first snap? And then they put him back in the fourth quarter, and he fumbled again, and they got a touchdown. I don't think any coach in America would have put that guy back in.
Well,
now, I'm not saying that lost the game, because Michigan State still had to drive for the touchdown. But come on, those coaching moves like that.
Yeah, but to be fair, one of those 2 times, first of all, number one, they've been playing McCarthy the whole year. So he has been getting meaningful snaps against good teams. So that's not anything that they've done or did in that game that was any different than any other game. Now, you can question it, and I have as well, because he did fumble twice. But you also have to understand that one of those 2 times that Cade McNamara was in the medical tent. So they had to have him on the field. So that's what happened there. Well, I appreciate the call, sir. Thank you so much for the call.
Okay, and
Call
I
back
like your
anytime.
show. You do a great job. I listen
Thank
to
you.
it every day. If I miss it, I tape it.
I appreciate that so much. I appreciate that. And thanks so much for the call. Call back anytime.
Okay, thank you.
And that was going to be our last call, but we got one more on the line, so we don't want to keep this person that's been waiting for what I see is 4 minutes. So welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
All right, Mark Rogers. We got plenty to get to here in college football this evening.
Oh, boy. I don't know that we have plenty to get to. I think we've got as much as we can get to in maybe a minute or so.
Well, all right. Let me try and make this brief. I haven't been able to get a hold of you the last couple of times you've been on, so I just want to get to a couple things here real quick. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this weekend. I will say I'm happy with the Buckeye victory. It could have been more decisive if the red zone execution been there. Positives, I would say, continue to be Travion Henderson. I still like what I see from C.J. Stroud, even though he doesn't run the football as much as we would like. I think the defensive line is getting a lot better. The talent is finally starting to come to the fore a little bit there. Negatives, red zone execution, and, the back seven of the defense is giving up too many plays in the passing game. But overall, I think a solid win against a very game Penn State team. And I think we got good Sean Clifford this weekend and a probably more healthy Sean Clifford than we've seen in the past. So I'm not necessarily surprised that the game was competitive. I thought 18 points was a stretch as far as the line goes. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that.
I would agree on all accounts.
Okay. I do want to get to Sparty and the team up north. I will say this. I would, by the way, when is your rendezvous with Mr. Steve Dace? Is that tomorrow?
We recorded
Wednesday
this
appointment?
afternoon.
Oh, okay. Okay. He supply you any Built bars, by the way? He loves those things.
I'm sorry. Did he what?
Built bars. You got to try those protein bars. By the way, it'd be a good advertiser for you, Mark.
It would be.
Built bar.
Any advertiser would be a good one.
Excellent protein bars, by the way.
Okay.
I do want to touch on that game. First of all, I have to say I think Michigan is the better football team. Not that much better of a football team, but I think definitely in that game, I thought that they outplayed Michigan State. Was that, number one, your opinion?
Yep, that is my opinion.
I think Michigan. Okay, so you think Michigan lost it maybe more than Michigan State won it?
Yes,
Would you
they
go
did.
that far? Okay, all right, okay. It'd be interesting to hear Mr. Dace's opinion. I bet he's still kind of crestfallen after the weekend.
Oh, he is. Yeah.
I will say this, though. Thorne, the quarterback for Michigan State, is he more Brian Lewerke or Connor Cook or Kirk Cousins?
Oh, to me, he's Lewerke.
Okay. Okay. He's a high-end Lewerke, or he's, at best, he's Brian Lewerke.
No, I'll give it a high end. Yeah, I think that he can throw a better ball and he can drop some dimes.
Okay. I think he looked capable. I was really impressed with Walker. Is it me, or does Walker have to be the front runner for the Heisman right now?
Yeah, anybody who would not vote for Kenneth Walker for the Heisman Trophy right now, I don't know what they're watching.
I would tend to agree. Definitely the favorite for the Doak Walker. I like Bijan Robinson early, but I think right now clearly the best running back, and I think the favorite for the Heisman. I agree. On to the polls, by the way, Mark. I have to say, and I've said it before, Oregon at 4th and Ohio State at 5th. I don't think any Ohio State fans can complain. By the way, is Buckeye talk tomorrow, Mark?
Absolutely. Yes, it is. 1:30.
I will be there. It makes sense to me. I know Oregon's in a weaker conference. I know they have a very bad loss. Are you just overall in agreement on that, Mark? Or do you think that they're a little bit high? What do you think?
Well, I have the teams right where everybody else, or right where the committee does. So yeah, they're there's no comparison between the two resumes, and it's only going to get wider, but head to head, they played. So.
No, I agree. And they came to, it wasn't even on a neutral field. They came to Columbus
Sure.
and they won fairly solidly, Mark. It wasn't a game that came down to like some fluke play. Ohio State was pretty much playing for behind the entire game. Now, granted, they had two chances to tie the game up at the end of the game. So it was a competitive football game, but I think Oregon won fairly solidly.
Absolutely.
Last point, though, Mark, I got to get to this. I know you're running short on time here. With where they put Cincinnati, does that make it an even longer shot to where if they run the table, they're not getting in?
Yes. So
okay.
Cincinnati was the team that I was the most intrigued to see where they would be placed for the simple fact that everybody else holds destiny within its hands with the maybe exception of Wake Forest. So Oklahoma's number 8. Does it matter? Well, it tells us that the committee's not been impressed with their narrow wins. I get it, but Oklahoma's fine. Win the conference, go undefeated, maybe even trip up once, and you're in the playoff. So Cincinnati was the one team that I was most intrigued to see where they would be placed because the coaches poll and the AP have them at number 2. Why? I have no idea. They're nowhere close to having the second best resume in the country or having displayed that they're the second best team in the country. So I don't know where that comes from other than preseason perception. And that being one of the great fallacies of the AP and the coaches poll. So once they place them at number 6, that tells us they're not in the playoff today. What can they possibly do to get into the playoff? Well, obviously, in addition to taking care of their business, they need all sorts of ridiculous chaos to ensue to be elevated to the top 4.
See, I just think bottom line, they're going to need Oregon to get knocked out. They're going to definitely need Alabama to get their second loss. They're going to need probably Oklahoma to lose a game, maybe 2. I mean, there's going to have to be some things to really fall their way to get in.
Yep.
And I'm not saying I'm completely surprised at where they have them at. I think just overall, Mark, in closing, these last few weeks of the college football season are going to be intriguing. I think we're going to be having playoff debates going into the playoff at the end of the season. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be fun. And I'm going to be watching Mark Rogers, and I'm going to be watching you on Steve Dace tomorrow. And
there you
Buckeye Talk tomorrow, Mark.
Well, David, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I tripped on you there at the end of the phone call. I think you cut out, and I thought you had finished. But thank you so much for calling and adding your thoughts and support as always, sir.
Talk to you soon, Mark. Take care.
All right, everyone. That's a wrap here at the Voice of College Football, but certainly we want to acknowledge the Super Chat contribution from Sudhir DeHoop. Great channel. It's important to keep in mind Michigan State is the only Big Ten team recently to beat Ohio State when the stakes were high for both teams. Go Green. Well, the last time that Ohio State lost a Big Ten game was, of course, in 2018 against Purdue, and the stakes were mighty high in that one because that knocked them out of the college football playoff. And, 2017 they lost to Iowa, and, that was pretty big as well because that knocked them out of the college football playoff. 2016 they lost to Penn State but still made the playoff. Yes, 2015, of course, the last time Ohio State lost to Michigan State, and that, again, knocked Ohio State out of the playoff. Appreciate everybody being here. We've got a ton of live streams to bring you tomorrow at 12:30 Oklahoma, 1:30 Eastern Ohio State, 5 o'clock Michigan, 6 o'clock Florida State, 7 o'clock Miami, right here at the Voice of College Football. All those on their specific team channels, and we will see you next time, which again is 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central on the Oklahoma channel on Wednesday. Thank you so much, everyone.